It's been said that the two most important days of your life are the day that you're born and the day you find out why. Welcome to the second day, a special mini season of Willing to Win. 5 interrelated shows, all focused on helping you, your family, and friends begin doing things you've always wanted to do and keep the momentum going long after you start. There is nothing to buy. No new age gimmicks. No one will ask you to chant or walk on hot coals. Just hard science and hard work. All things you can do today for free. Join us as we pay it forward with Willing to Win, second day. I'm Dr. Jeff Kaplan, and for over 30 years I've traveled the globe from Dubai to Moscow and Johannesburg, from Singapore to Shanghai and Istanbul. I've studied the world's best businesses and the people that run them. But something is very different now. From the boardroom to the break room, there's a growing realization that our relationship with work is broken. But it's not too late. You still have a choice. Hold on to the past and struggle to survive, or join the willing, change, and thrive in the world of tomorrow that's already arrived. So if you're willing to think different, willing to work different, willing to change at the speed of now, then you're willing to win. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Willing to Win. I'm Jeff Kaplan.
And I'm Tara Thomas-Getman. We're having a lot of fun with our mini season over the holidays of Willing to Win, where we're walking you through 5 simple step strategies that you're not going to just throw by the wayside after the first week in January. These are not just resolutions, but a life plan that you can stick to and apply moving forward. Today's topic I love because we both have been so involved in this in our careers, and that's personal branding, knowing your value and really identifying who's that authentic self that, as you said, sometimes lies to you in the mirror. We need to really have that sort of self-actualization about who we are and what we want in life and how we can move forward with some simple strategies to make it happen.
You know what's really strange is with all the things that are going on the internet and how big the whole social media presence is, right? It's really the age of the authentic, right? If you look at the videos that are on TikTok that are getting all the views, they're not highly produced or anything like that.
So true.
They want to hear from real people. It's all about being you. But with social media is like Santa Claus. I mean, if you had a theme for this holiday season set of shows, social media is just like Santa Claus. It sees you when you're sleeping. It knows when you're awake. It's really hard not to be the authentic you with so many different angles and so many different ways you express yourself on social media. So there's a real generational divide. I was doing some executive coaching, and we went to work with the group in Detroit, in the auto industry, and it was really interesting that we were talking about being your authentic self and how important that was to developing your network, because you don't want to develop a network and have them support a version of you that isn't you. It'll all fail, right? You've got to have an authentic you, a real story, a group of people that really care, and then go and do some real work, change a real life, yours and others, right? So you can't really do that. But as I was talking about this, there was this one guy in the audience, and he goes, "Oh yeah, that reminds me of my 50th birthday party." I'm like, "What do you mean, your 50th birthday party?" And he goes, "Well, you got to understand, I was having this 50th birthday party. I didn't know I was having it. It was a surprise party for me, and my wife invited some people." And I said, "That sounds great." And he goes, No, what happens is she went in my office, and this was dated a little bit. He said, they went in my office and she got my little black book, right? And those are the days, when you had a Rolodex and a black book before the cell phones, right? And it had a list of all the names and phone numbers, his little address book. And I said, she got the little black book. She used that to invite everybody. I said, "What's wrong with that? You wrote their names down, they're your friends." And he goes, No. In that book had my friends from college and the guys I go, drinking with and partying with. And in that same book are the people, that I go to church with and that, that are parents of the kids at the school I go to. And I said, "What's wrong with that? That these two groups might be at the same party." And all of a sudden this guy turned into George Costanza, from Seinfeld. And he goes, "Worlds colliding, baby, worlds colliding." He was petrified that these two groups would see, because he showed himself in his mind, totally different to the two groups. They came together. Nobody saw the difference that he saw, but it just really reminds us that as we think about who we are, it's important to let it fly. There's a lady that is a very successful salesperson out on the West Coast, Sherry. You know who you are. Her message to everybody that she does sales training for is let your freak flag fly.
That is such a great message. What a funny story, and it's so true. Especially, like you said, with all of the ways now through our digital footprint that we put ourselves out there, it's critical that you embrace that authentic self, your personal brand, both at home and on the job, because our worlds do collide. We intersperse both our personal and professional relationships across the board. We caught up with somebody who's an attorney who realized that what some people think they need to bring to law school, or ultimately that first firm they land in, is not the ability to be real, to be themselves. So she now works to consult and coach other aspiring attorneys, especially many of whom might be students of color who are coming into worlds where they might feel sometimes that they have to sort of check their authenticity at the door. And we're here to tell you that's not the case. So let's hear from her about her success with living out her personal brand.
I came here from Jamaica when I was a child. And so it's always been my dream to chase the American dream, right? To get an education and to get a good job and, to just make my parents proud. And so that's what I did. I think I accomplished that. I went to college and then went to law school here in Illinois. And after graduating, I worked at a litigation firm, just handling employment cases. And now I am the general counsel of a university here in Chicago. But my passion is teaching and mentoring people coming up and coming into the corporate space and the professional space. So I started a business, co-counsel consulting, that helps pre-law students get into law school, and then law students succeed once they are in law school. And then anyone who has graduated from law school, if they're looking to, move through professional ranks, set themselves up to be successful once they step into their career, they can also meet with me and have consulting sessions with me as well. So it's a little bit of a background, but that's where I am now.
That's great. Just being an attorney going through the law school journey was a huge commitment and achievement. So why go beyond that and now give back and share your knowledge with others? Why take that extra step?
Honestly, because it's daunting. The process is very daunting. And for a lot of us who, came here from another country or don't have parents who are set up in the system who, are lawyers or family members or friends, there's a lot of stuff that you don't know. And as readily available as everything seems, there's quite a bit to the process that you just don't know until you go through it. And so I struggled through it, and I was thankful to have great mentors who, sat me down and gave me the advice that I needed and walked me through things. And I was so appreciative of that. I wanted to make sure that when I came through, I did the same thing for others, because it was so fulfilling to me as a receiver of the help. And so being able to give the help to others now is just as fulfilling, if not more, because I get to see the smiles on people's faces when they succeed. And it just makes me really happy to do that. So it's fulfilling and it brings me joy. So I'm happy to do it.
We found you on social media. So talk about what you've been sharing on Instagram and Twitter to really put your advice and your wisdom out there on these social media platforms.
Yeah, so social media actually is probably what got me started. When I was in law school, it was my first year, I decided to create a blog because I wanted to kind of write down my journey and give tips and kind of talk about what I was experiencing. And so I started that blog and I started sharing it on Twitter and Instagram. And at that time, this was really early on in social media. So I was just sharing to a few people here and there. And over time, I kept talking about my experience and people would follow me because of that, right? They're looking for people who are doing the things that they want to do. And I'm really interactive on social media. I try to talk to everyone and include everyone in the conversation. And so I just present myself as I am, but I love talking about my career. I love talking about law school. And it's a great platform to interact with people who care about that as well. So I just take the time to be on Twitter, share what I know. It's a great place to share resources and knowledge, and then connect with other people as well.
You talk about being professional yet retaining that authenticity. How does
Yes.
one accomplish that in a world, especially in the higher echelons of the law
Yeah.
circles that you roam in? You know, people might have stereotypical standards that others are being held to. So talk about how you navigate that. What's your advice for others?
Yeah, so I think, like I said, I started this as saying that I'm an immigrant to this country, right? So my culture has always been really important to me. I'm proud of my identity. I'm proud of where I come from. And I think it is so important to share who you are. We're all human beings. We're all here to connect. We're all, the same at our root. And so that is what's most important to me first, right? I'm a human being. You're a human being. We're going to connect. We're going to be doing work together. I want to know you. I want to get to know who you are. And I want you to know me. And I want you to know the authentic Latoya, right? I don't want to be liked for who people think I am. I genuinely want to be liked for who I am. And so that's kind of just my core, belief. But then also, trying not to take things too seriously, right? The work that we do as attorneys is already so demanding and so serious. We don't have to carry that on into our personalities as well. We can get the work done and still be ourselves. And I try every day to show up as myself. I'm a funny, outgoing, laughable person, and I want to bring that into every room that I step into. And I also know, not to toot my own horn, that I'm a great employee, right? So I show up, I do my job, I do it well, and I show up as myself. And those two things combined have allowed me to be in spaces and be the full Latoya that I am. And I don't feel judged. I mean, if you're judging me, for being myself, then hey, that's on you. I'm enjoying myself and I'm doing a great job, so it doesn't harm anyone at all. And so that's what I try to, present. And I hope that people see that and feel comfortable and then, can show up as their authentic selves as well.
If you're not comfortable with who you are, how do you expect anybody else to be, right? And it is tremendously difficult work to be out there putting on this facade and maintaining that. You will burn yourself out. Right? So first up is have confidence enough in yourself to be who you are, and then everything else will become easier.
That is such a great point. When it comes to reinventing ourselves, being capable now of sharing our personal brand has never been more accessible, where we can really put our content out there. And in this case, we met a social media influencer, Cynthia, who had a job in healthcare but really wasn't passionate about her work. So she leveraged her personal brand to completely pivot in the career world. Let's hear from her.
Basically, I realized that I had a boring job and I needed help figuring out how to succeed at my very boring job that no one talked about because it was boring. And so I was going to conferences and doing all these things and realized that that's not what gets you booked. So I started talking about all of the boring details that online and the troubles I was having and trying to come up with strategies and whatnot. And it turns out most people have boring jobs. And not that your job is boring, it's not the splashy, Oreo cookie campaign that everybody knows about, or the big viral thing that happened. It's actual just strategic marketing or strategic something else or IT or whatever it is. And so I built a following just kind of diving into these more difficult topics that actually hit a broad audience. And I don't know that was my intention early on, but it definitely worked. And I was able to connect with so many incredible people and build this network that allowed me to grow in ways I honestly never would have expected or thought of for myself. I was just trying to get better at my career.
So explain what this job entailed and give us one or two examples of why it was boring.
Well, it wasn't, again, it's not that it was boring. It wasn't a fancy marketing job. I was marketing in healthcare and community building and social media. And so the topic wasn't really discussed as much back then. And I'm going to, age myself. This was a few years ago. And so, when you weren't really with a Fortune, 500 or even Fortune 1000 brand, that was known, you really didn't get to talk about social media. You really didn't get to talk about marketing publicly because it just wasn't as interesting. And so I did, and I started submitting myself to all of the marketing like conferences and publications. And I was saying, look, there's a real audience for this. And I have a lot of case studies and I want to share them. And then I created a weekly chat where people could come and discuss social media topics for an hour. And yeah, everyone from, the Mayo Clinic and from to brands like Taco Bell join. And I all of a sudden got to be cool. So that was great. But yeah, that's where it all started.
That's really exciting. Tell me which platforms you now have a presence on and a little bit about your following.
Sure. So I work on lots of platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat. I used to be on, I actually stepped away. It just wasn't for me anymore. It just grew over time. And I did leverage that to start my own company, Bell and Ivy. And our focus is marketing campaigns that involve people. So on one side of the business, we run personal branding campaigns for executives and founders. And then on the other side, we actually run what we call the elite employee branding campaigns.
That is great advice. I love that line. And that's so true. And you found that sort of drive in yourself because you were willing to take the risk and leave the more maybe comfortable, stable job to start your own company. So how would you advise other people in that position like you? What did it take to take the leap of faith and to forge out on your own?
Yeah, I read this amazing quote from someone on Twitter recently who I just had a call with. And it was, the only true job security is knowing that you're good enough to work somewhere else. And I know that we working for companies, we go in and we made the table's uneven from the start, right? It's like how we go in, it's like, well, we have to deliver, we have to X, Y, and Z, and the truth is that you have to ask yourself, like, is the company important because I work there, or am I important because I work there? Like, how does it work? Like, did you go to Harvard? Does that make you important? And at what point is Harvard more important because you went there? And understanding like what that dynamic is in your life. The second thing is knowing that if you're unhappy somewhere, you're already on the way to the end. Like, it's already over. So maybe taking a step back and figuring out why you're unhappy so that you can I don't think everyone needs to start a business. I do believe that everyone needs to work somewhere where they feel valued. And it's hard, right? You start a family and you do these things and to take that leap. But I think if we change the way we think about companies and our working relationship, and make our job work a little bit more for us instead of the other way around, you start to think bigger and you start to see yourself as a bigger piece of the puzzle and the operation. And with that power, comes like true greatness, because you don't want to live it down once you've established it. But yeah, remember, it's a two-way street. It's a conversation, never one-sided. And if you feel like you're in an employee or in a company where you're not being heard or you're being overlooked, speak up and have those conversations. Make sure everyone knows how you feel.
So yeah, social media, I always say it's a blessing and a curse, but when it comes to being our authentic selves, if we have nothing to hide, if, like you said, we don't have two separate black books of contacts, we really can move forward in confidence and express our personal brand in a way that will benefit us oftentimes professionally.
Yeah, and I'm not saying, that you have to be an open book and say about, your uncle who's in Sing Sing or whatever the case may be. That's not it. We're just saying there is an authentic you that's a day-to-day you, and you should be comfortable with that and come to grips. The sooner you come to grips with who you are, the faster you'll be prepared to really accelerate your own career. And when you think about it, you come into this world and there's all this structure, right? You're expected to go to school and to do these things. You're expected to go to work and provide for your family, obey all laws, do all those kinds of things. And then social media has all these expectations of you. So I want to make sure and just, give the warning and just make sure people are aware that as they're going through all this stuff, be aware of the bus trip that is your personal journey. And as I've shared with you before, the way I view it is that for a vast majority of my life, before I sort of woke up to my second day and found out the reason that I was here, I was on a bus ride, right? I would go to grade school and they say, okay, it's time to get on the bus again. Now we're going to junior high, and I get back on the bus and again go to high school and then to college. What happens at college? I don't know. You can defer your student loans and stay around college for a little while longer if you get your master's or your doctorate, and every time I got off the bus, I went and did the thing that I thought I was expected to do. And then I would get back on the bus again, surrendering my own future to someone else that was driving, my career. It's time that you take that seat. It's time that you start driving the bus of your own career and say, where exactly is the next stop? Where do I want to go? And the only way to do that is to have a really good sense of yourself, because otherwise it's really easy to fall back on, well, that's what society expects. They know best, and I'll end up in a good destination. A lot of people don't, and you only have one life. You cannot risk that. We have to go and take charge of our own lives and drive that bus. You want to drive a bus?
Maybe not drive it, but definitely not, have some say in where it's taking me. I love that. That's such an inspirational concept. And it's true. We don't want to just go through the motions. So let's recap some simple steps, the 5-step plan for our mini season of Willing to Win. The first is know you matter, identifying what you want and really recognizing that you have a voice, you have a say in where your future is heading. The second one.
Actually, I just want to say one thing there. I want to know how many people may be listening or watching this podcast and have watched the ones before that haven't done that yet. So it's one thing to be here, and we so appreciate them being a part of it, but you've got to take action in order to get the results that we're talking about. So take that action.
Yeah, just one paragraph is all you need to put it in writing so you can cement that visually, that this is the plan moving forward. Secondly, we talked about having a people plan. So the people in our midst or the aspirational relationships that can really help execute our plan to move forward. And third, the winner circle. This is curating all of those aspirational, not necessarily aspirational, but all of those personal and professional relationships into that circle of trust, the people that we know we can really count on to be our mentor,
to meet regularly,
and our sponsor.
Share ideas, tell them when that liar in the mirror is doing their work again and that you need to snap back into the reality of you.
What's the step of action we can take for our personal brand?
This week, we're going to ask you, what's your story? So we know what you want, but tell us the story that got there. Everybody's got an origin story. If you watch Disney, you realize over the last year, the Disney Channel has changed from what Disney used to be to the Marvel Channel, right? All the content is about all these superheroes, right? And the superheroes each have an origin story. How they went from being ordinary, everyday folks to being superheroes. And I think that's sort of a parable for what's going on in the world right now, the work that we're talking about. So go find your superpower. In order to do that, you first need to know what's your origin story. Where did you come from? What's your motivation? Because you've got to match up what you want with why you want it. When somebody knows why you want it and they have that desperate, feel for that, and they understand you, why it's so important, they'll support you. I'll tell you one story. When you watch the Olympics a lot of times, the number one part of the Olympics in terms of content isn't, you've got the sports events, but
right.
Besides that, it's commercials, right? But it isn't really just the sports events. If you look at the time of it, it's not the time you spend watching the sporting events, it's the time they're giving you the backstories.
Absolutely.
So curling's coming on in the Winter Olympics, and Americans don't know a lot about curling, so they may phase out, right? But they start that curling coverage with a story of that girl and how her parents had to take her 900 miles uphill both ways twice a day so she could go, do curling. And then you come back to the actual event and you're like, sweep, baby, sweep, come on, curl, like you're really into it because you know that origin story. Give yourself the gift of an origin story that will let people know why the vision, the future you want is so very important, and then people will root for you.
That's such a great point, but we have to qualify this. Part of telling your story is it needs to be clear and concise. And you've heard that concept of an elevator speech. That literally came from the concept of when you get on an elevator and you go up to a few floors, that's a short amount of time. That's a short trip. You should be able to clearly tell your story to somebody, especially in a world where we all have short attention spans.
We were in a training session in New York City, and it was a great conference, and we're looking out literally at the ticker tape, on the Times Square. So, really cool office space. And we're talking to all these executives about, doing what's called an elevator pitch, right, for sales. Same thing that we're asking you to do for your own personal brand. And we said to them, it's got to be this short, concise thing. You could tell it to somebody on an elevator, go ahead and do this, right? And you think they'd be back in 15 minutes, right? 4 hours later, this one guy comes back, and the rule was all he could tell us was the elevator pitch, no context. But he broke the rule. He says, no, in order for you to understand it, I have to tell you a little context, right? So 22 minutes later, he does the context is over, and then he reads his one paragraph. And I said, dude, unless you're in Dubai, there is no elevator that's that big. And in case you don't know, Dubai has the tallest building in the world. And so you really have to be concise with that because people don't have unlimited patience. And the patience they do have is getting shorter and shorter every day.
Sadly, so true. Okay, let's talk about what's to come. What's step 5 that we're going to preview for our next episode?
Well, then we want to tell the world about it, right? So we're going to have an episode called The World's Best Sellers. People that have taken their personal story, combine that with their own goal, and then what they're trying to do in their job to create this ongoing success that's really more about them as a cult of personality, as somebody they want to be, people want to be around and to work with, than it is about any products or services they represent. That's why they're successful no matter what they do.
Can't wait for that message. And we know you can't wait to see it or hear it either. So check us out, willingtowin.org. If you missed any of our content for this bonus holiday season, Willing to Win, willing2win.org. And we will see you again soon. Thanks for joining us for another great and fun episode of Willing to Win.
Stay connected.
Willing to Win is produced by Lift Productions. Guests on the program are not compensated, nor is their appearance representative of the Willing to Win views. Willing to Win does not necessarily endorse any people, products, or services.